Welcome to Switching On Electrified Skills, the podcast that sparks your curiosity and ignites your passion for a career in electrification. I'm Deepak Farmer. Join me on this electrifying adventure where I connect you with industry leaders, visionary education providers, and pioneers driving the electric revolution. Discover the world of skills, jobs, and community, gaining actionable insights, inspiring stories, and the latest developments.
Welcome to Switching On Electrified Skills. Here I have Debbie Johnson with me today, who is the Head of Skills and Talent at Innovate UK. Thank you very much, Debbie, for joining us, and really looking forward to have this podcast with you. And firstly, I'd like to start with, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you've ended up at Innovate UK.
Yeah, no problem. So it's what we call a wavy journey. I have been with Innovate UK since 2020. Prior to that, I worked for 18 years looking at construction skills. But even that, I didn't end up in. I took a route through university. Didn't see that one through to the extent I thought I would at the time. Ended up in retail and from there to construction. But all through my career, and probably because of my background, it's been about people supporting people. A lot of what we do is about actually making people realise that there's so much opportunity out there for them. So coming to Innovate UK was really interesting for me because my initial role was in research and exploring how do we get more businesses to innovate. But all roads lead back to how do people enable that to happen. So just over 2 years ago, I moved into this role looking at talent and skills and how we support businesses. But because of the challenges that things like the ERS Hub are there to help and support both individuals and businesses. So it's been quite different coming to Innovate UK in terms of suddenly dealing with lots of sectors. But fortunately, I think we've got a willingness to collaborate and do better together.
Brilliant. Thank you. I think it was quite interesting because your perspective is quite important here, because a lot of the organisations that we work with, for example, training providers, non-traditional training providers, businesses, they all rely quite significantly, I've noticed, with regards to how much the government can support them on their journey. And you must have a huge amount of, knowledge in terms of the dynamics of why that is so dependent on that government agenda.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge challenge for us that we shouldn't rely too heavily on government. Of course, businesses and people should have free will. Yes. But you do see how much government can make things happen by setting out challenges, by setting out targets. You can suddenly see that when we galvanise around a challenge or a problem, that actually people can see that pathway through more clearly. Working across government isn't easy. I'm based in Wales, so you've also got, the consideration of how each devolved government works and devolved administration. It's not easy, but actually when you get down to sort of like the crux of the issue, that actually we need to collaborate, not compete, that government departments need to talk to each other. And actually, when we look now at some of the work that we do at Innovate UK, it's about looking to the future. And that's what, for example, our parent department, DSIT, which is the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, is about. It's about identifying what are the things that will make a difference to the UK. And then when you're talking to the Department for Education, who are concerned about, the journeys of young people and adults, it's about saying, how do we make that opportunity possible for people? So it is really exciting, but I do think more so now than ever, we need to see the effective collaboration between businesses and people underneath that government structure. But I do think that we've got more of an opportunity than ever to make sure business voices are heard, to make sure that we are aware of what people want in terms of how they see their lives, and how we can make that happen within the UK.
I think that's really relevant. The way that people learn and the way that people sort of adapt to the new environments, it's changed a lot over the years. And, we've seen that in the way that people acquire education or skills. But from your experience in the construction space, how is that, what things are the similar and dissimilar in your approach to now tackling multiple sectors?
So it's really challenging. One of the fundamental sort of considerations we've got in the UK is how do we stop it being perceived that there's a single pathway for you. So construction was an amazing sector. I still love it. In terms of you can start anywhere and you can end up anywhere. And it's always amazing when you hear a CEO sort of talking about their apprenticeship journey, because I've moved to UK research and innovation, and the general conversation is about PhD studentships and fellowships. And it ignores this massive population who have never been to university. I think, 35% of the UK population go to university. So every time we only talk about university, we're just overlooking so much opportunity and potential. So that's what I've loved about the construction sector. But I don't know if it's serendipity, but coming to Innovate UK was just perfect timing, because businesses are now reporting that they can't achieve their innovation ambitions because they can't access the people with the skills they need. And so then you're like, well, how are you looking for them? What are you outlining in job descriptions? When you say that someone's got to have a degree or a PhD, why? And that's the interesting thing now, is it's actually, we need to get better at celebrating our technical education system. As much as we celebrate our world-class universities, and that opportunity now feels like it exists with the emergence of Skills England and a focus on technical excellence colleges that go alongside institutes of technology, etc. I think coming into Innovate, it's been about saying, celebrate universities, make sure that everybody who wants to has the opportunity to go to university and can achieve their ambitions beyond that. But make sure we're talking about the breadth of possibility, that actually you can go through a degree route doing an apprenticeship, that actually you might choose that you're going to go into work straight out of education and come back to education later on, because more so than ever, that need for reskilling and upskilling is actually fundamental to how we'll move forward as a country.
This week, I was listening to parliamentary questions. All right, but it was interesting that the debate that was going on, they were talking about that there is a huge amount of jobs out there, lots of careers in lots of different sectors, but it wasn't that there isn't enough people, it's that there isn't enough skilled people to fill those roles. And that's an important thing, because I think sometimes we talk about the skills gap, we somehow think, oh, we haven't got enough people. But actually, it's the skilled people within those fields, and a lot of the sectors are actually competing for a lot of the similar skills. What are your thoughts on that?
So that's my biggest thing at the moment. Like, every sector you talk to will say, and everyone will say, we need 100,000 people in the next 5 years or else. The challenge that we've got in the UK is that every single sector is saying it. So especially, back to DSIT talking about critical technologies, from quantum to engineering biology, then talking to the Department for Energy and Net Zero Security. You'll talk to them about offshore wind and about clean energy and clean growth. We have to get better at not being precious, because one of the things for me is actually the transferable skills people have. It's really interesting when you hear about people's wavy careers. We were talking yesterday about somebody who was a quantum physicist who now works in clean energy, and it's sort of there are underpinning transferable skills. And so every time that we think that we need new people, actually what we need to think about is what industries are in decline, how do we appreciate the skills those people have, and how do we bridge the gap. And I think that's where sort of online platforms, local provision will actually allow people to say, actually my match is 75%. I know those 25% will actually be critical for me doing that job well, but how do I get those 25%? How do I bridge that gap? And then I think we can, I don't know if we'll ever stop competing, but we can stop talking about needs in isolation, and we can actually talk more broadly about the fact that we need more engineers, more technicians, and we'll upskill as long as they've got the base of the skills. Then we can upskill them in the sort of specifics once those jobs become apparent.
When I hear businesses or talk to businesses, they often talk about the skills gap, how they can't get the talent, and are hampered by in various different forms. I guess I got two questions for you around what do you see as some of the primary challenges for businesses, but most importantly, from what I see, is they're probably the least engaged stakeholder, right, in terms of supporting the skills development. What are your thoughts on that?
I think this is when we get to the complexity of the underpinning sort of issue, and where we are now in 2024 compared to where we've been in the past. Businesses are investing less than ever in training their people, and that's real time, and it's also comparable to OECD countries. So we've got a real issue with business support for workforce development, and I think it'd be nice just to say to businesses, you need to help us sort out the problem. The challenge is we've got a really complex skill system in the UK. Keir Starmer, sort of said in the early days of the new government, the skill system is a mess. And you're sort of like, so how do you expect businesses to engage? How do you expect businesses to know what's going on to get to the right solution and not, open a door, find out it's the wrong door and just shut it, never to be reopened again? So I think we have a massive challenge going on in terms of that business engagement. But I think the answer sits within the skill system. It's actually how do we get people uniting around a single doorway? So the Electric Revolution Skills Hub, making sure that actually if I go through this door as a business, I can see the wealth of possibility. I'm not going to go through one provider's door, find out they can't meet my needs and think, that was really challenging. Mm-hmm. I'll save that for another day. And I think that's the challenge then with wanting to engage businesses, is we also have to appreciate they've got a day job.
Of course.
They have to make a profit to continue. And then with everybody saying, oh, come to my consultation, come and talk to me about something that, and I'll go back to the construction sector, which we've probably been engaging you with for the last 20 years, but would still like to reopen this conversation. I think we need to get better at being single points of contact for the right opportunities.
Excellent. And in terms of that investment from businesses, now, businesses, I don't think they realise this, right, but to a degree, obviously they pay tax, business rates, all the sort of stuff that ultimately, ends up as reinvestment into, from a government perspective. And we talk about the levy, for example, which has almost become a forbidden word. Most businesses see it as a tax. There's a lot of opportunities that I wanted to sort of discuss with you around, some of the apprenticeships and IFA and all the things that are happening. And that will be quite interesting to talk about, because I think through this discussion, I would like to try to highlight some of those engagement opportunities for businesses that don't need to be so overbearing on their business as a organisation or a structure, that they can engage with to sort of upskill and support their teams and people.
Yeah. And I think that those are the amazing things we have in this country, that underpinning infrastructure, whether it be, IFA is set up as an employer-led organisation to make sure that we have a technical education system that's fit for purpose. But actually, before we even need to think at a national level, for businesses, it's how do you engage locally? And now you've got things coming out of, speaking to England, the Department for Education, like local skills improvement plans, how businesses can get involved locally in saying, this is the provision I need to further my workforce. So you've got that opportunity, and you've got funding from government running in parallel to that. So that feels like a massive opportunity to actually make sure that when you do want to open that door to workforce development, that it's on your doorstep. You're not having to sort of think about travel arrangements, etc., and losing off the job time. And then you've got things that businesses can do with schools. We're back to how do you make sure that, yes, it's about reskilling and upskilling, but actually that constant pull into the exciting careers that we've got on offer. And I think businesses can do that. And there's not everybody exists off feel-good factors, but actually when you go into a school and you've inspired somebody to say, actually, a career in STEM can be for you. And considering the challenges we've got around that in the UK, around sort of demographics and gender balance, actually there's so much a business can do to make a difference and feel the impact that they can have. And yes, in sort of like you can weigh that up against the apprenticeship levy. And there's all sorts of stats and facts around, apprentices will stay with a business longer than a graduate may necessarily. There was a large business talking about this yesterday, and actually you can see different benefits in making sure that you've got a diverse workforce and you've got people coming through from different walks of life, from different progression routes. The difference that then makes their business, that innovative quality that they can then be embedded in how that business operates, will then, as you said, lead on to productivity and growth. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a massive opportunity for businesses to engage. It's just making sure we can give them that clear path.
Excellent. And, going back to a little bit about yourself a little bit, how did you end up in the construction space? And what do you see now that you didn't see then?
So I'm going to go back a long way. As you'll have guessed, I've got a very strong Welsh accent. I am Welsh. I was born in Wales, but I was raised with learning difficulties. So I had speech therapy all the way through my primary education, what in those days was called remedial education because I wasn't keeping up. But all the way through that, I had people standing up for me and sort of making sure that the support I needed was accessible. So I was really fortunate then that by the time I went into secondary education, I was sort of back on an okay route and ended up in university. But I started working at 15 and all the way through, I just had people who inspired me and stood up for me and made opportunities available. So when I finished university, now we'll talk about London and my Welsh knowledge of London. I decided I'd like to move to London, so somebody offered me a job in Slough. Now, I've got to be honest, I thought Slough was in London. It's not. But it was because somebody said, what do you want to do? And opened that doorway for me. And then what I realised about that job, I worked for British Home Stores at that time, was that I enjoyed the training part of it. I enjoyed seeing how you could bring people in from different pathways, and actually by supporting them, they just thrived. And so I looked for jobs in training and somehow ended up then in the Construction Industry Training Board because it sounded like a job I could do. But again, all the way through 18 years there, people open doorways. And I feel that's what we've got to do when we all reflect on how we've got to where we are. It's very rare that somebody will say, oh, yes, when I was 15, I really wanted to work for Innovate UK, so I put my hand up for that. I don't know how I ended up here, but what I think is really important is there are very few people who put their hand up and say, I'm where I thought I would be when I was in school. But most of us will remember the people who inspired us. Most of us will remember the people who opened those doors. And then I do think we have a responsibility to give that back. The construction industry is amazing for that social mobility aspect. But I think we have so much in front of us to continue, I'm going to say, pushing into the world, because I do think that we're really good at making opportunity available to people in particular areas of the UK. But actually, we need to make, for those of us who are funded by government, we need to make life difficult for ourselves. We need to be saying, if these are the schools that everyone's engaging with, how do we engage with those schools? Because I think we've really got to make sure that we have that opportunity. I'm going to flip it back for a minute because this is sort of something that's key to me at the moment. The UK, for the first time in a few years, has gone down in the Global Innovation Index. This is something that's important to me in my day job. And one of the factors that, one of the, the indices of why we've gone down is the number of STEM graduates we have in the UK. And then you talk to young people about why they haven't chosen careers in STEM. And it's usually because nobody was inspiring them. It's because, we're very good at selling particular careers and particular pathways. We're also very easy at saying that's not a career for you. Construction being a key one where people are, we used to go into I'll be honest, full of men. And then you'd talk to them, and none of them would recommend that their child went into construction. And then you know we've got an issue. But actually, when you talk to them about what inspired them, about the fact they will drive past places that they know they were responsible for creating, actually there is some that, you know, you've got the pros and cons. So we have to be better.
And that on that subject around being better, you know, we're definitely in a different kind of world now, especially for youngsters, right? You know, looking at God knows what sort of influences all over the place on the digital media, wherever. And influence is such a big thing. You yourself talked about, you know, people inspiring you, opening doors for you. What do you think that we can do more to try and engage at that level, right, to inspire them?
It's really it's really difficult. So yes, so I've got 13-year-old twin boys and a 15-year-old. So now supporting them through their career choices is so difficult. It's that because, as you said, they've got this massive information at their fingertips. So we have to make things accessible, and we have to make them accessible in a way that they absorb information. I think that's really key. But again, we know that parental influence is a massive overriding factor in what careers a child will choices a child will take. So I think we have to again think about the multitude of factors. So yes, if we can engage on TikTok, via Snapchat, I don't use that, YouTube Shorts, all of that, I think that will be amazing, because I know that's where my children are absorbing their knowledge. And you know from looking at sort of like the influencer generation that you know we've got more people than ever who want to see social media factoring in their career route. But the thing we've got to do, and we've got to be really careful of, is not making that career route too narrow. So I'll go back to the university sort of challenge that we have in the UK, which is so many people have gone down a university route to PhD and want to then aspire to sort of this very narrow sort of tenureship academic pathway, and see leaving university as failure. And I think that's the problem we've got with sort of role models, and that they have to we have to see not just one route that sort of leads to success. If you don't make it as a footballer when you're 15, you know, your world's over. Actually, what have you learned by being through all of that football training? What teamwork skills, what sort of evaluative skills have you benefited from? So I think we need to talk to children and young people in a way that they can absorb knowledge. But I still think we have to make sure that parents and educators are aware of all of that opportunity, because we can't continue down a route that says when you get to year 11, are you going to sixth form to do your A-levels? No. Well, I don't know what else to say to you. It has to be, there's T-levels, there's apprenticeships, there's A-levels. Which one works for you? And we've got to get there.
I think that's such an important thing. The parents are so influential. Parents or even guardians or anybody that's, you know, supporting you as an adult. And I found myself, for example, you know, I was trying to play the algorithms, right, back against themselves. You know, you go onto YouTube, and because they tend to search for your sort of comedy stuff, whatever it is, the algorithm keeps throwing you back this stuff. Well, I thought, you know what I'll do, right? I went on the YouTube and I typed in 3D printing. And the algorithm started throwing 3D printing. My daughter didn't even know it was happening, right? So a little bit sneaky, but the fact is that, you know, the responsibility, and we're not going to change the social media channels, right? The problem is you search for the thing that throws you more of that stuff back out at you. But actually being able to influence them from actually there are other things, you know, the arts, the crafts, the sort of making, you know, how does material work, all this sort of stuff that is exciting. You've got to almost, as a parent, highlight that to them, right? That there are amazing careers in this prospect. The problem we've got, and you'll know this as well, which is where my next question is going, is that we tend to be in that space, right? And we've gone through our own, you know, struggles and whatever it is, so we tend to be in an informed place where we can support them. The majority of the country still has cultural differences. It still has a very different mindset at the parental level. And it's not even on their radar, and you don't know what you don't know, right? So it's how do we support those parents in making sure, and teachers to a degree as well, and career advisors, in understanding how are we going to get that message to them so they can give it to their younger generation?
Do you know what? I genuinely don't know the answer to your question. We see this across the country. Like, we'll go to some places and you've got sort of second, third generation unemployment, and you go to other areas and you've seen those towns and cities thrive based on level 2 education. So parents are sort of like, well, it worked for me, it'll work for you. Even, I've got to be honest, even I struggle, and I think I've been in this space, but my daughter's now turned around and said she wants to do biology and chemistry, and I followed an arts route, and I'm absolutely out of my depth, and that then scares me, because I think if I don't know and I consider myself to work in the skills space, how do we do it? And it is, I just think, again, maybe it's Facebook, like I'm thinking about my generation, maybe it's Facebook, but the challenge is, like, we talk to so many people who want to make a difference, but they'll say, oh, well, we're going to invite parents in. And I'll go to a very selfish, my outlook. I work full time. My kids after school have got every after school thing going every day of the week, usually 2 different directions, if not 3. And then when somebody says, oh, you should come here and learn about all these amazing career opportunities for your child, I'm like, well, what gives? And I think that's the problem we've got in today's society, is we're all busier than ever. So how do you get to parents? And so I think we've got to think about, so how are they absorbing information? Where are we turning? I think social media is so interesting in terms of, like, picking up your Instagram feed compared to somebody else's and seeing just how much it is impacting your life. But I do think we've got to think about how we do it, either through some form of media. But I think this is one of our most fundamental problems, because of just how our society's evolved. And I do turn then to schools, and I think that's unfair of me, because we know schools are under more pressure than ever, coming out of what's been, since 2020, a really difficult education journey for so many young people. You think, how can we put more on teachers? But then I think, actually, I don't know how we do it, but it is about getting those inspirational people into schools to talk to young people in a way that means something to them, in a way that's not specific. We don't have to sell semiconductor engineering. We can sell engineering, we can sell STEM, but just make everything accessible for young people. So even if they go home and they're in a place where, people don't leave this part of the country, actually there is a college or a university that's available to them, so they don't have to leave home if their circumstances mean that's not going to happen. Alternatively, making sure that if people do want to leave, that we're making that pathway accessible to them.
That makes sense. And what do you see at the moment is the biggest demand, with regards to, I can tell you about, a few different areas, and we know that there are multiple things now that are not vertical, but more horizontally cutting, right? What do you see as some of those, sort of primary sort of skills that you can use in different sectors?
So this is such an interesting question, because I think this is fundamentally how we help business. What we're seeing now is a lot more startup businesses saying, I can teach people technical skills, I can't teach them what you might call workplace skills. But there's so many words for this, like essential skills, soft skills. But one of the things that we are seeing more and more in demand is what I would call skills associated with innovation and entrepreneurship. So evaluative skills, critical thinking, and creativity. And oddly, I then come back to the things that we do knock out through education. When children are young, they're just asking why constantly. And through education, it's like, put your hand down. And then when they come out of school, we're like, people aren't creative. And it's like, no, because you made them follow such a stringent route. But those are the skills that now seem to be in demand, because we constantly have to look at our world differently. And that's the amazing thing about people, especially young people, is actually they're more mindful of our environment and our society than I think we've seen before, and how they make a difference. But as you said, overlaying that, like, we know, like, technicians are one of the sort of massive shortfall areas that is preventing progress. We know we need more engineering than ever. But as you said, it's it's the things that go across, like data skills. Dare I mention AI? You know, robotics. Do you know what I mean? Actually, I was talking to somebody the other day about welding, and there's been all sorts of reports about, you know, welders can now earn 100K a year or whatever. And actually, we're talking about how can you use robotics with welding to actually help alleviate that sort of people concern. So I think we've got massive opportunities to look at our world differently, but it's above and beyond the technical skills for that pathway.
And in that world, I find it quite exciting that, we use words like, data science and AI. AI is not new, right? It's been, God knows how many times it's come up in the peak. But what has happened in the last couple of years is becoming very accessible in a very user-friendly way. And over the last few years, I've heard it over and over again in every sector, whether it's electrification or batteries or green skills or creativity or AR, VR or whatever it is. And we talk to businesses, a lot of people are seeing these sort of cross-cutting skills or technologies as solutions, right, to continue to be competitive and giving them an edge. Do you feel that that is true, that technologies like this do give people an edge, or do you feel that it makes them lazy?
So it can make people lazy, but it's so transparent. Sorry, because we've been dealing with, we've got a fantastic program at Innovate UK called Bridge AI, which is actually how do you support businesses in successfully considering AI. So I absolutely agree that AI in, if you like, the wrong hands will get a business nowhere. Somebody said, there's no, you've got to ask the good questions. If you're asking bad questions, you're not going to get anywhere. So what I think, and I feel this way about the technology we've got in front of us today, is AI has a place. And AI, like mobile phones and mobile technology that allowed so many people to work from home during lockdown, it serves its place. And we can see AI technology improving how we do things. And again, we are back to, we do have to think about the fact that we've got a declining population. We will be at some point in the future thinking about the number of people we've got in the UK. So how we use technologies as a supporting factor in that is essential. But again, all of the use of AI I've seen is unless you've got somebody leading that who has this much more broader awareness, you've got to question AI constantly. You've got to question how it's adding value. And by doing that and being critical of it, I think it can make a real difference to us. But it's I'm going to be very brave in this statement. See no evidence that it's going to sort of put, the original thing, it's going to put people out of jobs. Again, it's actually about how we incorporate it in how we do and how it makes us better. We use in Innovate UK, we use certain products, etc. And it means, for example, I don't have to scribble notes constantly because we can transcribe and record and summarise more than ever. These things help us do more. I'm not sure that's always a good thing, because we've got other things supporting us in where it makes a difference.
It's that productivity factor, right? I wrote an article recently about AI, and it was actually focused on the idea that it shouldn't be there to replace or try to substitute what you know, but actually be able to enhance, your own skill set and maybe even help communicate it in an effective way. But at the moment we see AI, right, in a very accessible way as something like a large language model, ChatGPT, all the things. But there's more to AI, right? So many more layers above, right, in terms of innovation, in research, right, being able to support that. Have you started seeing more of an emergence of using AI for the betterment of technology and research as opposed to just language models and stuff?
Oh, definitely. And if you look at the work that UK Research and Innovation is doing across its research councils, you can definitely see how everything is pulling in together. And like you said, it's taking us further in a faster way. back to productivity. And again, I think that's somewhere where we have to support it. If we want to be a global superpower in leading technologies, we've got to think about how we do that in a faster way, because the reality is, countries are competing against. I'll go back to quantum. Countries are competing against each other. How does the UK define itself? And we do have issues with productivity and growth in the UK. So I think it's about incorporating things where they'll make a difference. But again, I do, as you've just said, I do come back to it's the intelligent use of that makes a difference, that will get us further in terms of research and innovation. But without being informed, without being supported, it will unfortunately make us lazy and stop things from happening.
In terms of that, so, AI, digital technologies, in the world that we live in now, help us to work with each other better, help us to communicate better, even to a point where people who have difficulties in learning, sometimes, these sort of technologies can help them, elevate themselves, because they've got more to give. And sometimes you don't have the tools to be able to give that, but these tools are actually helping that. But in terms of collaborations, or what forums can be used to be able to collaborate more, other than the digital way, in terms of trying to support each other. You mentioned earlier about that we've got lots of different things going on, right? We've got, for example, the AI Bridge AI that you've got. We've got things going on in construction, electrification, green skills. How do we collaborate more from your perspective?
Things like meeting in person. And so this is where this is about using the right forms of technology and communications at the right time. So as I mentioned, I came into this role in 2022, and the skills space can be small, but equally it can be massive. And I looked at it, and it's sort of like, if you're coming into this for the first time, wanting to make a difference, where do you start? So I do think that we've got to think about how we build relationships and then how we make a difference. So Innovate UK has recently set up something called Talent and Skills Connect. And the reason for that is very selfish, is I spend a lot of my time speaking to people and then joining dots. Like, you really need to speak to this person because they're doing some amazing stuff. But this can't happen in pockets, and we have to have everybody knowing who each other is. So how we simplify, how we make things accessible has to be from everybody knowing what is available through technical education, what's available through our independent training provider network, what's available through our universities, and being able to make sure that we're not duplicating, recreating stuff that's already amazing in its own right, and actually harnessing the things that we do have. So one of the things that really excites me about Innovate UK, this is so in my detail, but we've got what we call 3 domains. Mm-hmm. So we've got digital and technologies, healthy living and agriculture, and net zero. And now what's amazing for me is we've got skills hubs in each of those domains. So we've got one called resilience in healthy living and agriculture, an AI skills hub in digital and technologies, and the electric revolution skills hub in net zero. And now what really excites me is not only back to the sort of horizontals, how do they inform and cross-contaminate to be even better, but how do they grow and really make it sort of that one-stop shop? So that's what we're doing, if you like, for organisations and for businesses. It's about actually how do we make things really easy for you to access, and how do we make communities easy for you to tap into. We've also got something at Innovate UK called No Limits, which is a digital platform. But I'm back to sort of what you know. So No Limits is about saying there should be no limits to anybody's sort of pathway in life. Before I moved to Innovate UK, I'd never heard of a Russell Group University, and I'd never heard of a fellowship or studentship. And it's sort of like, why would you? I'm absolutely fine with it. However, for people, though, having that knowledge will help them make more informed choices. So No Limits is about any organisation who's got something for a person in terms of either coming into work for the first time or career development, putting those opportunities on there so we can signpost everybody to all of those amazing opportunities that the UK has to offer. But I think, digital solutions will work, but actually we need to think about how do we get that broader collaboration with everybody talking.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, we do need to talk, right? And having yourselves and all the great work that Innovate UK do in trying to bring together, I absolutely agree. You can't do it on a one-to-one basis, right? Because how many do you do, and how many of you are there? But actually having highlighted forums like that or opportunities to collaborate will definitely support that. But and I'm moving on a little bit from that and actually looking at it from a more of an international perspective. At the moment, what do you think you see as other organisations across the world? What do they see us as in the UK? And do you feel we're a good place to come and invest?
That's a massive question. So I think we've got our strengths, and I think we are good at playing to our strengths. But because I'm me, I always think we can be better. So we do a lot of work with international innovation agencies, and I do feel that, especially when you think about the UK, sort of comparably, we punch above our weight. But the reality is we've got a productivity challenge in the UK. So we've got clear strengths in terms of our research and innovation strengths, our amazing universities. But it is, when you look at across the UK, we've still got pockets of areas that we desperately need to improve. So I think, that's me being sort of quite self-critical, because I think we always need to do better. But I do think people look to the UK and see how accessible our networks are, and see that, if you go to a place like the West Midlands or Greater Manchester, actually what's growing and thriving in those places now makes it investable, and you can see how combined authorities are actually playing to their strength and also addressing their weaknesses. So I can tell you the countries I envy quite easily, for either how they're looking at sustainability or how they're looking at their workforce systems. But actually, I think we should celebrate what is good about the UK, but we definitely shouldn't rest on our laurels.
So we're coming up to the end now, right? And before we close, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you would like to see, right, going forward in the next, few years. Not just from, an industrial point of view, but in terms of supporting people and seeing differences being made into people's lives and their careers. What's your vision there?
So this is a really timely question as government move into a new spending review period, and really thinking about what are the things that we should address that nobody else is sort of thinking about as their core focus at the moment. So for me, it's the upskilling and reskilling idea, because I think we've got lots of opportunity to improve our career pathways. We've got a huge focus through the Opportunity for All mission that the government's leading in terms of, if you like, pathways into employment. But actually, we're going to be working in a world where more and more people are going to be changing careers. So I think we've got to get better at simplifying our skills system, so we don't have a mammoth range of engineering apprenticeships, but we've got a bolt-on approach. So I'd really like to see providers, catapults, etc., thinking about what's the difference, like how do we upskill and reskill people without asking them to start their careers over. So I'm really excited about thinking about that side of things, and I'm also really excited about the sort of the adoption of innovation. So as well as us being world leading for innovation and research, and having these fantastic ideas coming from the UK, how do we make sure all of our businesses and thereafter our society benefit from that amazing power that we have? So I think we've got I'm always really excited about thinking what is possible, but I think for the first time, we've got the underpinning infrastructure through the skills hubs, through the Catapult network, through our higher education and further education. I think we've got the infrastructure to make it happen. Now we just need to sort of almost put the icing on the cake.
Let it flourish. That's really interesting. Well, thank you very much, firstly. To be honest, we could spend hours, talking about the subjects, and I know that we're both very passionate about the skills space. But, it's time limited, and, I'm sure we'll get another opportunity to do this, right? But if there's a last key message that you want to give out there to anybody that's listening, what is that?
Never let anybody tell you no. I mean, don't always say yes, but actually, if somebody says no to you, it means it's possible. So keep on exploring, and every opportunity will lead you somewhere. So take it, learn from it, but push for what makes you happy.
That's a really good message to leave this on. Thank you, Debbie, for giving us the time, and I look forward to continuing the good work.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me on this electrifying episode of Switching On Electrified Skills podcast. Together, we'll shape a future that is powered by electricity. If you would like to learn more about electrification and explore courses and jobs, please visit ershub.co.uk or connect with us via social media channels. Thank you once again for joining me today. Until next time, keep charging ahead and unleash the full potential of your electrifying skills.